Hey, everybody, I want to talk about Lori Daybell. She's on trial for the murder of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, who was shot and killed in July of 2019. Now, I've been following along with a testimony from Chandler Police Detective Nathan Moffat as he broke down the forensics, the trajectory analysis, and the blood evidence that I think is going to unravel Lori Vallow Daybell's self defense theory. Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil, your go to true crime channel where we dive into the criminal investigative process and hopefully provide a little education along the way. Now, we're going to be moving quick because I think you're just getting tons of information about the Lori Daybell case, but I want to share testimony about the crime scene from my perspective. But before we jump into today's case, take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to ring the bell so that you don't miss any of our future videos like this one. And please consider giving us a thumbs up. Now, let's get started by returning to the crime scene at 5500 South Four Peaks Place. I'm not giving the exact address, but you can find it. This is the Chandler, Arizona home of Charles Vallow, who was shot and killed. And thanks to Detective Nathan Moffat's testimony, we got a master class in crime scene reconstruction. So let's kind of set the stage. It's July 11th, 2019. Detective Moffat said he was in the middle of a regular shift at the Chandler Police Department when a call crackled across the radio. Shots fired, a man down. It's about a 15 to 20 minute drive from the station, and like any good detective worth his badge, Moffat grabbed his gear and he headed out. Now, when he arrives, the place is already locked down. Patrol officers have set a perimeter and crime scene tape has gone up. Multiple detectives are arriving, and here's where things get a little bit wild because Moffat describes this moment kind of like a wrestling match. He says whoever speaks up first usually grabs the case. And on that day, Moffat ended up with what's called the case agent responsibility. Translation means he's responsible for documenting every inch of that house, collecting the evidence, and keeping the case detectives informed on what's going on. And Moffat doesn't just roll in blind. This is a guy who's been trained in shooting reconstruction and crime scene ballistics. He knows how to read a crime scene like a story written in blood, brass, and broken furniture. So what was it that he walked into on that day? First and foremost, he walked in on a body, Charles Vallow's body, laying in the living room. Of course, the living room was empty, void of any furniture. There was a blood pool under his left shoulder and a baseball hat on his laying there. A shell casing here and there, a shell casing over there, a bullet embedded in the baseboard, and another bullet buried in a hardwood floor. Now, let's break all that down real quickly because Moffat and the team start with taking photographs, not just your average photographs either. The Chandler Police Department uses something called a Lizard Q. It's a 360-degree camera that captures the crime scene in panoramic detail before anything is touched. And then they can add in place cards to show where the pieces of evidence are. And those are the little yellow tents that you see. So kind of think of them like a bookmark in a grim chapter, one by a hat, one over here by the bat, and more by the bullet casings and projectile strikes. Now, as Moffat walks through the crime scene, he explains how everything is photographed from multiple angles and then painstakingly diagrammed. Now, it's not to scale, but it's close, and it's got triangulated measurements from fixed points so they can point out where every single thing in the room is. And all of this feeds into a bigger picture of what happened in that room. Where was the shooter, and where was Charles? Now here's where Moffat starts putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Charles Vallow had 2 gunshot wounds to his body, one to the chest and one to the lower abdomen, and each had corresponding exit wounds. Now Moffat links the exit wound to the bullet that's embedded itself into the hardwood floor beneath Charles' shoulder. So that bullet came up through the abdomen and out through the shoulder. That's really important because he knows that because the body was removed by the medical examiner, he sees where the blood was and the divot in the hole, and that leads to recovering the bullet. He actually had to cut out a section of the flooring, which he tagged as evidence. And he said it was a really tough job getting that out. And then we got to think about the bullet casings. These are the thing that holds the gunpowder, has the firing cap on one end and the projectile in the other. And when that bullet is fired and the bullet or the projectile goes out of the barrel, it causes the casing to just be expended or thrown out of the weapon. Now there were 2 shell casings, both .45 caliber, and they were near the west wall of the living room. Now Moffat went through a really nice explanation of how semi-automatic pistols eject casings out to the right, so that's my right that I'm showing, and then showed how they landed where they did. Now it's possible they were kicked around on the floor, but I think that they probably were not. And though he didn't test fire the weapon himself, the position of the casings helped confirm general shooter location. So that makes me want to talk a little bit about the blood, because he talks about the blood on this particular case. Here's what's fascinating. Moffat and his team went through every single room in the house: bathrooms, bedrooms, kitchen, laundry room. They looked in trash cans. They were looking for blood spatter, swipes of blood, any signs of cleanup in the sinks, anything like that. And aside from the blood that was under Charles and one little smear on the kitchen faucet, there was nothing. No bloody rags, no trails, no blood drops, nothing. Just that one mystery spot on the faucet in the kitchen that could potentially indicate that somebody went in and cleaned up or washed their hands. And then, of course, we had to talk about the gun. They found it in a different room entirely, tucked neatly in near a trash bag and a pistol case inside that they described as inside this room called the pink room. The gun was still loaded with a live round in the chamber and a full magazine. There was also a spare round inside the bag. Moffat made the gun safe and then documented everything, bagging it up. Now, the big takeaway from this is Moffat testified that based on trajectory rods, these are things that they used to show what direction the bullet traveled. They were able to use these during the autopsy to determine wound locations, blood evidence, bullet strikes, and projectile recovery. Charles Vallow was most likely laying on the ground when he was shot in the abdomen, the second and final shot. So the first round came head on, and then once he was laying on the ground, and the first round would have killed him. In fact, probably did kill him. And so he was executed with that second round, which entered up through the abdomen and out the shoulder. The trajectory lined up with that divot that was on the floor. And given the lack of stippling, these are burn marks that appear when shots are fired at close range, Moffat concluded that the shooter was standing several feet away when the final shot was fired. All of this tells a story, and it's not one that Lori and Alex were originally spinning. In fact, I spoke about this on Court TV tonight, and I wanted to share that.
But here she is talking about Tammy, who is Tammy Daybell, Chad Daybell's wife, and also talking about Charles. So the 2 spouses of Lori and Chad. And again, this is the future spouse of Alex Cox.
They were saying was that she actually did pass away, but what happened was that she was taken over by an evil spirit. and then they were, that she had become a zombie, okay? So, in the back of my mind, here I am thinking, okay, they said the same thing about Charles, right? And then Charles ended up being shot.
How about that, Mike? It's everyone's getting shot once they become possessed, once they become zombies.
Yeah, if you're a cult leader, that's the cool part about Revelation, Vinny, is that you can come up with these ideas. And what they, in effect, did by doing something like this, if it's all true, they dehumanize the individual. They say, listen, this person's already gone. There's this zombie that's taken over their body and soul. And our job as this belief system that we all have is to get them onto their eternal life somehow. And that is to kill the body, which kills that spirit. And I think that's where the taping across the mouth and other things come in from some of the wacky things that I've read about this case. But most importantly, that's the thing that's happening is it's dehumanizing the victim and separating them so that they're not committing a homicide. They're doing God's will, whatever this God is that they believe in, and they're getting rid of this person. And frankly, they're even kind of saviors to this person because they're saving that body and soul and getting them reunited in heaven. I mean, the whole thing is so frustrating when you look at it, and that people didn't see these red flags popping up along the way, especially after at least one. Could that have prevented Tammy's death?
Mike, what are your thoughts about what Tylee had to say? She's a teenager. I don't know what she was told or if she was coached at all, but what are your thoughts about what she told investigators here?
Yeah, I don't think the defense attorney, Lori, in this case, even watched the interviews again before she came up with this story. There are so many inconsistencies in this thing, Vinny, that trouble me. But most importantly, we get to this point where Tylee is saying, I went outside with JJ. My mom remained inside. That conflicts with Lori's testimony just a day ago when she says, I took Tylee and we ran outside. Then she also says something that really troubles me, and that is she says Alex comes in after Charles gets a hold of that bat, and Alex starts to wrestle with him. So that's what gives Tylee the opportunity to flee the house and go out with JJ alone. She doesn't say her mom comes with her. And then she says a while later, my mom comes out, which again conflicts with what Lori said a day ago in her opening statement. So those are two major things that I hope that the prosecution brings up. And then the big thing is if Alex is wrestling with Charles and this Major League Baseball player has a bat in his hand, somehow there must be a freeze in the warp system because Alex Cox is able to somehow get to his room, retrieve the firearm because there's no mention that he had a firearm up to this point, and makes it back in time to shoot and kill. But in this warp that's going on, Lori must somehow find a way to get out to the car because she says she's not inside when it happens, which all, if you look at the facts, is malarkey.
Well, we'll wake you up. We're out of time, guys, unfortunately. We're on a tight schedule here on Closing Arguments. Big thank you to the King brothers, Rick King and Mike King. Maybe a singing group, I don't know. And Jarrett Ferrantino, great to see you as well.
That's it for today. I hope you didn't mind me taking 5.5 hours of testimony and dropping it into about 10 minutes of discussion. But if you're finding this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and follow Profiling Evil. And please share us with your friends. Now, tomorrow, we'll be back in court trying to figure out what's happening on the examination and cross-examination. And frankly, it's almost embarrassing and almost sad at times to watch Lori Vallow Daybell try to cross-examine these witnesses. She clearly is out of her league, and she clearly made a huge mistake by representing herself, in my opinion. But I hope you'll take time to enter your comments down below, and please weigh in on the comments of others. Thanks for tuning in to Profiling Evil. I really do appreciate you coming along for the journey here. And I hope that you'll look for us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, make sure you're checking out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, and make sure you check out our website at profilingevil.com, where you can sign up for our bolo and look at our story maps and other kinds of things. And while you're there, if you like true crime books, please check out my books. I hope you'll purchase them. But most importantly, if you're interested in this cult dynamic and cult behavior that's going on in the Daybell case, I think you'll find my book Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, to be really informative. I talk about cult recruiting tactics, how these people get away with what they're doing, and how they maintain control over seemingly intelligent people. If you live in the United States, I'll sign the book and I'll ship it to you for free. Otherwise, you can get it at Amazon. Hey, thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon.